The lake was silent that morning, until a splash shattered the stillness. A wheelchair sank fast beneath the dark water, dragging with it a young girl who could not move her legs. Her small hands thrashed against the cold, but the lake swallowed every cry. Terror burned inside her chest. The one person meant to protect her had pushed her in. As the world blurred into darkness, a sudden force cut through the water. A German shepherd, fur slick with spray, fought against the current with every ounce of strength. His jaws clamped onto the straps, refusing to let go. The girl's trembling fingers reached for him, clinging as though he were the only thread left between life and death. On the shore, a figure watched in silence, then turned and walked away. But fate was not finished, because at that moment, headlights cut across the mist. An officer's eyes locked on the impossible scene. A child drowning, a loyal dog fighting to save her. What happened next would uncover secrets darker than anyone imagined. Subscribe to Shepherd Legacy for more true stories of courage and devotion. Tell us in the comments, which city are you watching from today? The cold water wrapped around Emily like chains, dragging her deeper and deeper. The weight of the wheelchair pulled her down so fast she barely had time to scream. Bubbles rushed past her pale face, her teddy bear spinning out of reach into the darkness. She tried to push, to kick, to fight, but her body would not obey. The lake was swallowing her whole. Above the surface, Richard Hale stood still on the dock. His polished shoes barely touched the wood as he stared at the ripples, his expression colder than the mist curling around him. He didn't call for help. He didn't run. He simply watched. And then he turned away. But fate had other plans. A splash broke the silence. Ranger, a tan and black German shepherd, leapt into the lake with a force that shook the stillness. His muscles strained against the pull of the current as he dove toward Emily. He grabbed hold of the straps with his teeth and pulled, thrashing, fighting against the icy grip of the water. Emily's trembling fingers dug into his wet fur, desperate, clinging to him like he was her only chance at life. Not far away, headlights swept across the fog. Detective Sarah Blake slowed her cruiser, her instincts prickling. At first, she saw nothing but the morning mist dancing over the lake. But then she heard it, the frantic barks cutting through the silence. The sound of struggle. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She yanked the car door open, boots hitting wet ground as she sprinted toward the shore. And then she saw it, a wheelchair sinking, a child tangled in its straps, and a dog refusing to let her go. For a heartbeat, Sarah froze. It felt unreal, too cruel to be true. But then training and instinct kicked in. She bolted down the slope, sliding through slick grass, lungs burning. The lake water rose around her legs as she waded in, her uniform soaking through. "Easy, boy." "I've got her," she shouted, reaching for the child. Ranger growled low, not at Sarah, but from the strain of holding Emily above the water. His body trembled with effort. Sarah's hands slipped under the girl's arms. With a heave, she pulled her free from the sinking chair. Metal clattered beneath the surface, vanishing in bubbles. Emily gasped and coughed, her small chest jerking violently before she dragged in a ragged breath. Her lips were blue from the cold. Her eyes, half closed, glassy, clung to the last flicker of life. Sarah pressed her close, whispering fiercely, "You're safe now. I've got you." Ranger stumbled onto the bank beside them, sides heaving, water dripping from his thick coat. He nudged Emily's arm with his nose, checking her like a parent checks their child. And there, on the muddy shore, a bond was born, not just survival, but something deeper. The girl, the officer, and the dog were now tied together by fate. The heater in Detective Sarah Blake's cruiser hummed low, filling the silence with a steady drone. Emily sat in the back seat wrapped in a blanket, wet curls plastered against her pale cheeks. Her body trembled against the leather, shivering with every breath. At her feet, Ranger lay stretched out, his amber eyes fixed on her face, as though making sure she would not slip away again, Sarah gripped the steering wheel with one hand, her knuckles white. The other held a thermos of untouched coffee, shaking slightly. Every time she glanced at the rearview mirror, the same hollow image stared back Emily, lips pale, gaze fixed on the window but not really seeing. Sarah knew that look. She had seen it before. Not just shock, but something darker, heavier. When they pulled into the precinct's back lot, Sarah cut the engine and turned. "Emily," she said gently, "you're safe here. No one can hurt you now." The girl blinked but didn't answer. Her small hands clung tighter to Ranger's damp fur. Sarah leaned closer, her voice soft but firm. "I need to know what happened at the lake. Can you tell me?" For a long moment, Emily just shook her head. Then her lips parted, her voice barely a whisper. It wasn't an accident." Sarah froze. Her pulse hammered as the words sank into her chest like ice. Emily's eyes brimmed with tears, her body trembling as she buried her face into Ranger's coat. When she spoke again, the words were broken, fragile. "My dad. Richard, he pushed me." Sarah's breath caught. The name hit hard. Richard Hale, charming, respected, the kind of man who smiled for cameras and shook hands at town meetings. But here, in the backseat of her cruiser, his daughter had named him her executioner. Hours later, Sarah stood in the break room, the smell of stale coffee in the air. On the television, Richard addressed the town with perfect grief. Tears ran down his face as he clutched Emily's framed photo. "My little girl," his voice cracked. "She vanished in a terrible accident at the lake." Cameras flashed, capture in every angle of a father's anguish. Sarah's jaw tightened, her grip on the counter so strong her knuckles turned white. She had just pulled Emily from that lake alive. And here he was, lying to the world. Behind her, Captain Norris cleared his throat. "Blake," he said firmly, "I know what you think you saw. But this isn't your fight. Let Child Services handle it. Don't get dragged into something you can't win." Sarah didn't answer. Her eyes drifted to the corner of the room. Emily sat curled up in a chair, wrapped in a blanket too big for her, clutching a worn teddy bear to her chest. Her wide, pleading eyes never left Sarah. "Don't leave me." And Ranger's eyes too steady, unblinking, daring Sarah to walk away. Her chest tightened. She swallowed hard, her decision sealing inside her like steel. "No," she whispered. "Not this time." The night pressed heavy against Detective Sarah Blake's cottage. Emily lay tucked beneath blankets in the guest room, her small hand wrapped around the silver locket she wore like a shield. Ranger lay stretched across the hallway, ears twitching, his body tense even in rest. Sarah sat at the kitchen table, case files scattered before her, a single lamp casting long shadows. Sleep refused to come. She couldn't stop seeing Emily's eyes, the silent plea, the raw fear. And Richard's face, smiling on television as though the world belonged to him. Every instinct in Sarah screamed to walk away, to let the system handle it. But deep inside, she knew the truth. If she didn't fight for this girl, no one would. A rumble of tires broke the silence. Headlights swept slowly across her window. Too slow for a passerby. Too deliberate. Sarah's pulse quickened. She reached for her service weapon. Ranger was already up, muscles tight, a growl rumbling low in his chest. The doorknob rattled once, then splintered. A masked man forced his way inside. Ranger launched like lightning, teeth sinking into the intruder's arm, dragging him sideways. Sarah's gun snapped up. "Emily, get back!" she shouted. Emily screamed from the hallway, clutching her teddy bear, eyes wide with terror. The fight was brutal. The man slammed Ranger against the wall, but the shepherd refused to release his grip. Sarah fired, the bullet splintering wood inches from the intruder's head. He froze, panting, trapped between her gun and Ranger's teeth. Her voice was steel. "Tell Richard this ends here. Dawn found them on the road. Emily buckled into the back seat with Ranger pressed close like a shield. Her small voice whispered, "Mom said." "Butterflies. That's where it's safe." Sarah's eyes met hers in the mirror. "Haunted, fragile, but certain." Then we follow the butterflies. Hours later, the road led them to rolling meadows, alive with a storm of blue butterflies dancing in the sunlight. At the far edge stood a weathered cabin. Sarah's hand hovered near her weapon as they stepped inside. On a table sat a single wooden box. Emily's eyes widened. "It's hers." "Mom's." But before Sarah could lift the lid, the door slammed shut. Richard Hale stood in the doorway, his suit sharp, his smile cruel. "I knew you'd come chasing fairy tales," he sneered. His eyes locked on Emily. "You should never have survived. Step away." "Richard," Sarah warned, her gun steady. He laughed, low and cold. "You failed before. You'll fail again." The cabin erupted in chaos gunfire, wood splintering. Ranger lunged, knocking Richard off balance as a bullet grazed Sarah's arm. Emily sobbed, clutching the locket. "Stop, Mom wouldn't want this." For a heartbeat, Richard faltered. His mask cracked, humanity flickering. But rage returned as he raised his weapon again. Sarah fired first. The shot tore through the silence. Richard staggered, falling hard, his weapon clattering away. Deputies stormed in moments later, hauling him away in cuffs. On the table, the box lay open letters, photographs, proof of fraud and abuse. And among them, a final message. "Emily, my brave girl. If you found this, know that I never left you. One day, we'll be together again." Emily clung to Sarah, tears spilling down her cheeks. For the first time since the lake, hope lit her eyes. Ranger pressed against her knee, a silent promise that she was never alone. And as the sun broke through the cabin's cracked windows, Sarah knew the storm had finally passed.